Culture and Tourism Authority Board of Directors meetings. It's Monday, October 12th at 4 p.m. We're in the Bob Baldrick Theater at 851 East William Street, Carson City, Nevada. Can I get a roll call?
Yes, Stacy Giomi,
Here.
Bobby Rader,
Here.
Mike Jones,
Here.
Steve Kim.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Can I stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Thank you. At this time, I'll ask for the public is invited at this time to comment on and discuss any topic that is relevant to or within the authority of this public body.
I see no public comment, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Hearing no public comment, we'll move on to agenda item 5 for possible action and approval of minutes for the September 14th, 2020 CTA board meetings. Are there any questions on the minutes from any of the board members?
I have two minor corrections. My name is Bobbi, not with an E, in the first paragraph. And then in the second paragraph, it's this Stewart Indian School, Cultural Center and Museum. Thank you.
Any other comments or requests for changes?
This is Stacy. I move to approve the minutes as presented with the corrections noted by Bobby with an I into the record.
Can I get a
I'll second that. This is Bobby.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion is passed. Item 6, possible action, adoption of the agenda. I don't see any reason to move the agenda around, but if anyone has any items they'd like rearranged, we can discuss it now. All right. Then we'll keep the agenda as is. Next item, 6, the consent agenda. Would any board member like any individual item pulled from the consent agenda for individual discussion? Right. Would any member of the public like any item pulled from the consent agenda for individual discussion? Hearing none, if I could get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. On to action item number 9, or none for discussion only. Update on American travel and the period of COVID-19, presentation by destination analyst David.
Yeah, so thank you, Chair Jones, and members of the CTA. For the record, David Peterson, Executive Director with Visit Carson City. So I'm so happy to have Aaron Francis, who is the President and CEO of Destination Analysts, with us today. Every week since March 15th, Destination Analyst has surveyed 1,200 plus American travelers about their thoughts, their feelings, their perceptions and behaviors surrounding travel in the wake of the coronavirus pandemic. And Aaron is with us today to give us an update of what's been going on out there. And this is data, again, through the week of October 5th. This is something that the team and I have been using to help us guide our marketing efforts and to help us understand, how we think travel is going to be coming back to Nevada, but more specifically, obviously, to a rural destination like Carson City. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Aaron right now to do a nice little presentation for the board.
Good afternoon, all of you. I wish I could be there in person, but it's a pleasure to be with you still virtually and present the latest findings on what we know on how Americans are thinking, feeling, and behaving when it comes to travel in the period of COVID-19 from our Coronavirus Travel Sentiment Index study. This is independently produced research that I'll be sharing with you today, and it's created solely to help the travel industry navigate and recover from the COVID-19 crisis. As David Peterson mentioned, we've been conducting an online survey of 1,200 Americans who traveled in the pre-pandemic time every week since March 15th. From each of the 4 major regions of the United States. These are new travelers that are surveyed each week. It's not the same group of people. After the data is collected, it is weighted by geography and demographics to ensure its representativeness. The confidence interval of what I'll be sharing with you today is plus or minus 2.8%. And my update to you reflects data collected between October 2nd and 4th. So not this past weekend, but the weekend before, and that was the 30th week of our study. So I'll get into now what the research found. I invite you to relax and listen. The deck is available to you, so if there's anything that you want to study in more detail later, you have that there. I always like to put the findings into context with a summary of the headlines that were around when Americans answered our questions. So coronavirus cases at that time in the US, they topped 7.3 million, deaths were at 208,000. And even with the addition of over 600,000 jobs, the September jobs report showed a slowing economic growth. Disney announced that they would be laying off 28,000 workers. And without yet securing additional government stimulus, airlines said that they were going to plan mass layoffs. But really all other news fell to the side when our president announced that he had contracted COVID at an event at the White House. So in light of news like this, how are Americans feeling about travel right now? Well, expectations for the pandemic's course in the next month did darken last week. 47.5% felt that the coronavirus situation was going to get worse in the US in the next month, and that was up from 43% the week prior. And just 20.5% felt it was going to get better, which was less than the week before. And looking at the percent of Americans who feel things are going to get worse over the 30 weeks of the survey, which is the orange line that you're seeing here, we see that after a 2-month period of waning pessimism, we had a notable bump up last week. The gray line on this chart on the right is showing you the percent of American travelers who do not believe the pandemic is going to be over before 2020 concludes, and that remains over 60%. Those who believe it will be over by the end of the year, which is the blue line that you see there, that remains under 20%. But the big question, the president's announcement of his contracting of COVID-19, this did not spike American travelers' own concerns about contracting the virus. In fact, the percent of American travelers with high degrees of concern about personally contracting coronavirus
Aaron, we lost, or Desi, we lost Aaron's audio.
Okay, let me look into that really quick.
Do we need to be in recess?
Hello?
Aaron, are you back?
Hello, you can't hear me? I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can now. Yes.
Oh,
Can you,
okay.
I think you need to
I'm
back
sorry.
up maybe just a slide there.
Okay. This was a big one. So I was saying it was really interesting to see if the president announcement of having COVID was going to affect Americans' own concern. And I think this is good news for travel. It actually did not spike Americans' concern about personally contracting the virus. And we actually saw high degrees of concern decrease. If we look at the average degree of high concerns about contracting the virus over the last 7.5 months, if you see here on the right, we're actually in a low period of Americans having super high concerns about contracting coronavirus. The percent with high degrees of concern about friends and family contracting the virus also fell to 72.9% from 74.3%. And if we look at this average over time, it again shows that we are at a low point. And American travelers also appeared largely unfazed by the September jobs report and the looming layoffs, at least thus far. Those with elevated levels of personal financial concerns also dropped to 53.6% from 56.5%. And that represents a 30-week low in that metric. 81.6% continue to have elevated levels of concerns, though, for our national economy. However, the average degree of concern for the economy is at yet another low point. And what all of you in the room and me as well are most interested in is the bad news and growing pessimism. It did not appear to impair Americans' travel plans. 27.9% feel that they're fully ready to travel with no hesitation. 28.6% said they feel ready but have some hesitation, and 43.5% still need more time. So we look over here to the right, we see those in a ready to travel mindset is now 56.5%, and that's the highest it's been since we began asking this question back at the end of May. And as you see on the chart on the right here, agreement with travel avoidance has remained consistent and relatively lower levels for the last 5 weeks. And agreement with this statement, due to the coronavirus situation, I believe travel should be limited to essential needs only. That remains around 52%, although I think Americans have varying definitions of essential needs. And if we look at Americans' trip plans, now almost 80% have at least tentative ones right now. And this figure had been hovering around 75% for quite some time. So that 5% growth is really welcomed. And over 40% of American travelers anticipate that their very next trip will take place before the end of the year, and most likely by car. Another indicator of the burgeoning openness to travel is this one, the ability of discounts and price cuts to motivate travel. In an earlier phase of the pandemic, there was a significant proportion of American travelers that could not be swayed to travel by a discount or price cut. No matter what, they staunchly were not going to travel. And now a steady high 42.4% of American travelers say that such discounts would indeed make them interested in taking a trip in the next 3 months. We track the safety perceptions of over 24 individual travel-related activities. This chart is showing you the percent that feel each of these activities is unsafe. At the top of the chart, things suggestive of mass group gatherings or being near to strangers that you can't control, and also transportation. But at the bottom, many things in which the experience can be more
Desi, Aaron cut out again.
Dave, can you hear me?
We can, but we can't hear
felt
Aaron.
the most safe about travel activities. So now 30.9% feel confident or very confident they can travel safely in the current environment, which is, and the blue line, the percent who, the gray line, the percent that don't feel confident is decreasing. Another indicator of confidence, Americans' comfort heading out for leisure activities within their own communities is also the highest it has been since March 15th when we began this study. And also last week, 53.6% continue to report higher degrees of excitement about taking a getaway in the next month. And although we haven't again hit the peak that we saw post-Memorial Day in this metric, we are in a period where excitement for near-term travel is the highest it has been since the onset of the pandemic. And similarly, openness to travel inspiration remains at 49.6%. We had a peak in that metric the week prior to last, and that was only the second time we reached that level during the pandemic. But as you can see, we're in a sustained pandemic period high for openness to travel inspiration, and we hope to see that number continue to improve. And importantly, now nearly 60% feel that having a vacation plan for some time in the next 6 months will bring them happiness. So in summary for this section, despite growing pessimism in recent events, American travelers' health and financial concerns continues to decrease. Americans' perception of travel safety, their confidence in traveling safely, and their readiness to travel also continues to improve. Nearly 80% have at least tentative trip plans right now. Discounts and price cuts can motivate travel more so than any other time we've seen in the pandemic thus far. And planning a vacation, having a scheduled vacation is suggested of bringing happiness to many. So with travel readiness gradually improving, and for now, travel in a period of recovery, we explored what travelers' interests are as they look out over the next year so that it might help with marketing and messaging crafting. Where do they want to go? We asked an open-ended question. What are the 3 U.S. travel destinations you most want to visit in the next 12 months? We asked this question in our survey back in August, and we've asked some form of it in our quarterly, the State of the American Traveler study for the last 15 years. A year ago, when American travelers named the domestic destinations they most wanted to visit, the hot list looked like this. And last week, when American travelers wrote in the top 3 destinations that they most wanted to visit in the next 12 months, the top of the list had a lot of similarity to pre-pandemic times, with Florida, Las Vegas, Hawaii, New York, and California dominating American traveler desires. Although, as we saw in August, outdoor brand destinations like Colorado and Utah, they do continue to displace some of our iconic cities for top spots. And here are the 20 most desired destinations named in a line chart by the percent of American travelers citing them when we asked this question 2 months ago in August. And just to compare to this week, we had 2 destinations that performed somewhat below how they did in August, and those are Orlando and Hawaii, as the red line falls below that blue line here. However, the average percent of Americans who wrote in these top destinations is the ones they most like to visit, 6.4% in August, and that actually rose to 7.5%. That's an indicator to us that Americans are sort of heading back into more of what was normal pre-pandemic. We then asked what we would call a focus question, having them name the single destination they most want to visit from the list that they provided in order to identify which destinations generate the most aspiration. And it actually looks very similar to their top 3. Hawaii moves up a bit when it comes to the single most. For the single destination they most want to visit in the next year, we asked them to describe the type of destination to make the experience they are seeking clearer. Urban destinations, we think, actually appear poised for making a comeback. Over a third categorize their single most desired destination as a city or metropolitan area. In our survey the week prior to last, we looked at what American travelers were planning specifically for this fall season, and this is the type of destinations they felt likely to visit here in these next few months. And I think a couple of things are interesting about this. First, city and urban experience had moved past beaches, and that's something we had not yet seen in the pandemic. And then note that 40% reported that they're going to plan to visit small towns, villages, and rural destinations this fall. Although that's much higher than the 13% who characterized the single most desired destination they wanted to visit that way. So I think it just poses a question of sometimes the place that we most want to visit is not necessarily what we actually are due in as we plan travel. But cities do look like they are getting some of that emotional pull on travelers back. So now let's look at the factors American travelers are saying are important to their destination aspirations. Like in pre-pandemic times, there's importance placed on affordable, popular, and accessible. And there are some that have to have a beach, family friendliness, and outdoor recreation. The pandemic is still likely to weigh on destination decisions for some time, both directly and indirectly. Although being safe, being a place with good COVID safety procedures, and being a place where people wear masks and are socially distant aren't at the very top of this list, there's still 15% who say that each of these coronavirus-related factors are important to them in choosing where they're going to visit right now. It's certainly a new set of factors to juggle for destination positioning, marketing, and advertising. As far as how to best reach travelers right now, they say they'd be most receptive to destination marketing through digital resources like websites found via search engine, email, Facebook, and online content like articles and blogs. However, printed travel or lifestyle magazines and official visitor guides are among the top. Interesting, since we've heard throughout the pandemic that printed resources had made a resurgence. When we look at the channels travelers are receptive to by generation, as you can imagine, there's a difference. Millennial and younger travelers, which are designated by the dark blue line here on this chart, they're most receptive to travel marketing on Instagram and Facebook, as well as general online content and blogs. Relative to older travelers, they're more reachable through streaming video, Pinterest, TikTok. Meanwhile, baby boomers can be better reached through search engine marketing, email, and printed resources like magazines, official visitor guides, and newspaper travel sections. So in summary, top tier US destinations are dominating the hot list of where Americans most want to visit, although outdoor destinations continue to displace some iconic cities for top spots. There are indicators that urban destinations may be poised for further recovery as cities lead in traveler aspirations. In addition to affordability and accessibility, factors related to coronavirus safety continue to be critical to destination aspiration and selection. Younger travelers continue to be more receptive to travel marketing on social media, while baby boomers are comparatively more reachable through print resources. And as we look towards travel recovery, one of the most critical questions for our industry now is, for those still engaging in travel avoidance, what do they need to convince them that it's safe enough to travel again? In this section, I'm going to explore the mindset of what we call the travel avoiders. For this analysis, we define these as travelers who have some level of agreement that they're planning to avoid travel until the coronavirus situation in their mind is more blown over. And as a reminder, as of now, just over half of Americans identify as a travel avoider, which is held constant and relatively low for the pandemic for the last 5 weeks. We asked these travel avoiders how satisfied they are with information available to travelers to help them decide when it will be safe to travel again. And just 54.1% have some level of satisfaction with the current information that's available. We then presented this group with a list of information sources and asked them to select which they believe have their best interests in mind. Half of travel avoiders selected US government agencies and scientific experts or doctors. Secondary to these are state and local government agencies. In terms of who they trust most to provide guidance on when it's safe to travel, this group by far places the most trust in scientific experts and doctors. Travel avoiders also need many assurances before they will feel comfortable enough to travel again. Over half of this group say they need an effective vaccine to be released and widely distributed. Half also say they need the virus to be mostly eliminated, and a third take this a step further and say they need it to be completely eliminated. Just under half also want the CDC to specifically announce that it's safe to travel. And although less common, a notable proportion of travel avoiders are also holding out for travel providers to improve their own COVID safety protocols. I think which demonstrates the inroads that our industry still has to make in order to build trust and confidence in many traveling consumers. And lastly, just 15% say they're waiting for their own friends and relatives to demonstrate that it's safe to travel. We asked this group to select and rank the top 3 most important things they need before they venture back into travel, and topping the list are having an effective vaccine widely distributed, the CDC announcing that it's safe to travel, and the virus being mostly eliminated. Which brings me to the topic of how American travelers are actually feeling about a COVID-19 vaccine. Over the last 24 weeks, we've been asking Americans about their level of agreement with the statement, "I'm not traveling until there's a vaccine." The blue line on the chart here on the right shows the proportion who agrees or strongly agrees with that sentiment, which has been on a slow decline since July. We also wanted to explore whether or not travelers anticipate getting vaccinated when a vaccine is developed and approved for use, or if it is, later this year or early next year. This week, 41.5% said that they would. However, when we compare these results to when we last asked this question in September, the proportion saying they would get vaccinated has declined from 44%. Those who are not averse to taking the vaccine were then asked how long they would prefer to wait before taking the vaccine. And it appears that these travelers have varying degrees of waiting periods. A quarter would prefer to take the vaccine within the first 3 months that it's made available, while 1 in 5 would prefer to wait 3 to 6 or 6 to 12 months. 1 in 10 say they prefer to wait over a year before getting vaccinated. We compare these results to September, we see there's now more reluctance with taking a COVID-19 vaccine within the first 6 months of its availability. So in summary, half of American travelers are still planning to engage in travel avoidance until the coronavirus situation is more resolved, a figure that has remained consistent for the last 5 weeks. For those still engaging in travel avoidance, the wide distribution of an effective COVID-19 vaccine is far and away their top ranked condition for being comfortable traveling again. But unfortunately, willingness to take a vaccine that's developed in the next few months has declined somewhat among the general American traveling population. And finally, looking for indicators of business travel recovery, we asked a series of questions to employed travelers about the return of business trips. First, we asked employed survey respondents whether or not people in their company had traveled for business purposes prior to the pandemic. And just over half of our survey respondents last week said yes. For those who answered yes, we then asked them whether people at their company had started traveling for business purposes again, and 26.7% said that they had, and that's up 2.5 percentage points from September. Those working at companies who have yet to resume business travel have largely not been given any indication on when company business travel will begin again. But when we ask when they anticipate their companies will resume business trips, while about a quarter anticipate their company's business travel to return by January, now well more than half expect that it won't be until April or later. So in summary, business travel resumption has increased modestly in the past month. And from the perspective of employees at companies not yet back to business travel, this travel is not going to return until after April. So thank you for having me present to you today. Just so you know, we release the findings from this survey every Monday at 5 a.m. Pacific via email. You are welcome to look for that information on our website or sign up to receive it, although I know David and his team also distribute it. So thank you very much. That's my presentation today.
Aaron, no, thank you. It was a lot of information. I commend you. That might have been the most efficient presentation of an 84-page document that I've had in a long time. But a lot of great information in there and a lot of insight that I think Dave and his team can use and put to good use when we're planning out our 21 plan. I don't know if any of the other board members have any questions. Stacy?
Yeah, Aaron, this is Stacy. Jim, I agree with Mike on the brevity of your presentation, and we're going to hook you up with a couple of people on our staff to help along those lines. But anyway, how do you define that group of travelers? I mean, what does that group look like, your sample group? And how do you choose them?
Sure. So we do a standard and market research using a panel company. So there are businesses, their sole business function is to incent people to be on their panel and invite them to take surveys. So we use one of the largest global panels. It's called Dynata, and they have millions of people in their panel, which allows us to survey new people each week. How we define travelers for the survey was they had to, prior to the pandemic, have traveled for leisure using a standard definition in tourism research, the distance to define a trip. So they had to have gone at least 50 miles for their home, specifically for leisure purposes. And that's how we define or allow someone to take our survey. We define this as a traveler. We didn't want to get, at least for our overall 1,200 sample, we didn't want to get more, start filtering out people because we can do that in our sub-analysis because we wanted to get a good snapshot of the entire traveling American population, and which is so, it's over 80%. And, you know, that includes lots of different income types and lots of different traveler types. So that's why we kept it defined that way, and not, you know, we didn't require that they had to stay overnight in a hotel, because we can, any analysis we could do of that group, we can just take them out from as a subsample of the 1,200.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the
You're
board?
welcome.
Hearing none. Again, thank you, Aaron. I appreciate you taking some time out of your day to help us navigate through all this, and appreciate your time.
You're welcome anytime. Have a wonderful meeting. Can't wait to be in Carson City again. Take care.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Aaron. Thank you.
Moving on to item 10, monthly non-action items for presentation and discussion only. Executive Director update, David?
Thank you, Chair Jones. So I only have one thing, Stacy, to talk about, so I'm going to keep this short and sweet. The team and I have been working on some potential grant submissions through the Nevada Commission on Tourism related to an allocation of CARES relief funding that that the Department of Tourism and Cultural Affairs was allocated by the legislature. So this is a super short timeframe. The process itself actually opened last week, and it closes this Sunday, so it's a pretty tight timeline. I'm working on this with the team this week to get our applications in. And the one thing that is nice about this particular program, there's no match required. So this is kind of a unique situation where we don't have to put up our own TOT monies. So I just wanted the board to be aware of what we are feverishly working on this week. And so that is my report for this month. Are there any questions?
Questions for David? Then we'll move on to the transient occupancy tax, actual versus forecast.
Thank you, Chair Jones. So in your packets, you have the big 12 by 18 sheet. I'm very happy to say that August, as you'll see at the bottom of the August column, we were, I say only down, but down just over 17.5%. Again, we were thinking we might be down around 25%, so I'm very pleased with the August collections. I did make a small adjustment to September. Originally, we were projecting to be down 30%, but with how July and August have gone, Chris and I made an adjustment there to be negative 25% for September. So at this point, you can see we're tracking around 18.3 million, if you slide all the way to the right, for our fiscal 21 projection. So I'm pretty pleased with how the summer collections have gone. I realize, as Aaron said, we have a long way to go to get to next June, but I think we're tracking very nicely with regard to July and August. So I'm happy to address any other questions, but I did not make any other changes from October forward through June from last month's presentation.
No, it's we talk every month that our glad our projections were wrong, and so it's a good news story. Any other questions on the transient occupancy tax for David?
Yeah, not a question, just a comment. You know, the lack of the increase in the negativity, so to speak. In other words, the fact that we're not going as far down as you thought is kind of in line with what, I mean, our sales tax numbers, as you probably know, have not been dropping either. In fact, we've had increases in sales tax, and we budgeted significant decreases in sales tax. And it's really a head scratcher to me. I think it's indicative of the federal money that has been pushed out. You know, because there certainly are some sectors that are hurting, but overall, sales tax numbers are up, and I don't think there's any doubt that we will hit a point where they will decrease and we'll hit some kind of a recession. At least that's the forecast that we heard from an economist at one of our previous board meetings relative to investments that the city is making. But really, the only area other than transient occupancy tax is our gas tax, which is down, and that makes sense. Those two things go together, really. You know, people aren't driving as much, they aren't traveling, and they aren't using hotels as much. So I just wanted to pass that information along to this body, because it kind of
Yeah, no,
comports
thank
with
you.
what we're seeing.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Events and sales update. James?
Hello, Desi, do I have the option to share my screen?
James, give me 1 second and I will make you the presenter right now. You should be getting a message from me.
So we talked about this a little bit last month with sports leisure vacations, potentially having a tour, a motor coach tour here. They've actually scheduled a date for May 20th through the 22nd of 2021. They'll be coming from Sacramento to Carson City and doing a tour at the Stewart Indian School on May 20th with a dinner option in Carson. And then on the 21st, we have a ghost tour that we are working with Mary Bennett to put together for them with the lunch before they head to Virginia City for a tour that we have helped them plan over there. On May 22nd, we have the Nevada State Museum. And then afterwards, they're going to depart back to Sacramento. So this is what we've been working on for the past couple weeks. We've already sent out an RFQ to all the lodging properties, and we've already coordinated with Stewart Indian School to kind of make the connections between that organization and our partners in Carson City. We've also connected them with Katie in Virginia City to kind of help plan the Virginia City itinerary. This kind of all falls in line with what our original goal was to promote not just Carson City, but the region. As the stronger we promote ourselves and the region, the more inclined tour operators will be to do things out here, as they find that there are definitely a lot of other cool things to see and do. And then they're going to finish off with we've also connected them with the Nevada State Museum with the minting of the coin on that Saturday morning. So this is what we've been kind of planning with them for the past couple of weeks. And we had the chance to meet with the city to kind of plan the Nevada Day weekend, working with Ken and also the Brewery Art Center. Lots of different partners have agreed to put on different types of activities that day. Prison tours, balloon launch is going to take place still. We'll have the rail bikes with the B&T. The Stewart Indian School, we're having the culture and the museum tour there. Rock drilling will still be taking place, but those are things that Ken is taking ownership of, as he should with the beer contest. And then we have the drive-in and ghost trains. And then the one that the CTA is very much involved in is trying to put together this reverse parade. When we met with the city a couple of weeks back, they wanted us to see what we could do to continue to have events on the Nevada Day weekend, but we needed to try to push people out of downtown. There's a lot of concerns with potential non-official parades taking place that weekend. There's also concern about having an influx of people downtown for an event when the governor's directives has us at 250 capacity. So we've been working on this idea, and essentially what the reverse parade is that we would, instead of the floats and the cars driving down the main street, they would be parked on the side at a certain facility, and the spectators will be driving through, similar to kind of like what they're doing for the Bonanza event that Parks and Rec is putting together over there at one of our parks. And so we, with that in mind, the committee came together, and this was actually a suggestion that they came up with at the different venues where we could try to do a reverse parade at. And the possible venues were at WNC, the Gold Dust West parking lot, as well as potentially the DMV. We're working with each of these different destinations just to see what would it be like if we could do something there. And you can see the maps that we have. We kind of have an entrance and exit places or areas that are definitely blocked off to kind of mitigate traffic. The yellow is where we anticipate people or cars to be parked at, and then people can just kind of drive through these areas here. This is the concept that we are hoping will prevent people from getting out of their vehicles or having interactions that we know could advance the COVID-19 out, and we're trying to avoid that as much as possible. So these were the 3 different venues that we are currently working on. Before I get into that, actually, there's a concern as well that not enough floats or cars may want to participate on that, and Ken with Nevada Day is working to secure as many of those participants as possible. And so these are just preliminary steps that we're going through right now, just to kind of have a prepared plan to present to the city. And then as soon as Ken comes back with word that we have enough participants that want to have a float or have a car, then we'll move forward with this plan. So by tomorrow is when we should hear word, or if not, in a few days from Ken, if this is something where we might have to actually cancel this event, or we can push forward with it. So this is kind of like a pre-planning before an actual event will happen. We've also been working with this virtual tour. I put together this here specifically for the new members of the board, simply because this last year was our first time ever attending Travel Exchange, which is a motor coach conference trying to get motor coach tour operators to Carson City. And last year we were in Texas, Fort Worth, Texas. And this year it was supposed to take place here in Reno, but because of COVID, they made it virtual. So they're still going to have the typical education days with presenters throughout the day to just kind of help, us as buyers understand the market, similar to what we've got from destination analysts. And we are already in the process of those preset appointments. They close on the 20th, and then we'll move forward to actually having this virtual tour in November. The good thing is that this is national tour operators, meaning that we're roughly within a 1 to 3 hour time difference from each other. So I don't have to be up at 12, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. We kind of mentioned this, and we kind of mentioned this at the previous board meeting, referring to ABA, another motor coach national conference, that it could potentially be moved from from January to June. And at the conclusion of our board meeting, the very next day, this announcement came out. So it's just to give you guys a heads up that this event did get moved closer to the end of our fiscal year. So those are the things that we've been working on for the past month or so. Any questions?
Questions for James? Thank you, James. Let's move on to the marketing and PR update. Lydia?
Hi, Desi. Can I have presenter privileges, please? All right. All right. So today I'm going to be only presenting our fiscal year 21 communications plan so that you have an overall idea of more of the PR side of what we're going to be doing. Let me get this in the full screen mode. So we'll jump right in. Can everyone see this okay?
Yes.
I know you've got a 25-foot screen behind you, but hopefully you can. So here we'll just kind of kick off our overall aim and goal, and then our public relations strategy, and move on from there. So our goal, as we all know, is to welcome more visitors into Carson City and help increase overnight hotel stays. But in the near term, our strategy is a little bit different, and that will be focusing on Nevada-based efforts for more staycations and road trips based off of that information that Aaron presented us, as well as proving that here in the short term. So for the public relations side, we'll be obtaining, our goal is to be obtaining 24 regional and national stories this fiscal year with an overall publicity value of $200,000. And we're focusing on our key target markets, first Nevada, and then when travel starts to open up, we'll be going further into California first before branching out into other more fly-in states. Second, we're going to leverage and strengthen our partnerships with Travel Nevada, the Reno Tahoe territory, and our neighboring DMOs to really leverage that center point of Northern Nevada and your Nevada experience and keep that theme going through, especially while this is more of a staycation and drive market focus. Our third focus will be to help increase website traffic and hotel page conversions, generated in part by referral traffic, social media, and the media coverage that we're getting. So how are we going to accomplish this? The focus, as I mentioned, will be near Nevada-based strategies for those staycations. We'll be focusing on COVID-19 recovery efforts, focusing really on responsible travel and safe travel. And that will be a primary focus, especially if these grants do go through for us. That is a requirement of those grants and something that we will happily be continuing the message for of that visit Carson City safely. Thirdly, we'll be continuing to forge those relationships with our local, regional, national, print, online, broadcast media, and including those influencers, bloggers, and bloggers that will bring in more media exposure to the area and awareness for us. We will continue to invite targeted media from our target markets to participate in more of our FAM tours or familiarization tours, where we host them in the area and show them everything that Carson City has to offer, and then they write about those experiences. So we'll be continuing to collaborate with Travel Nevada on that, and then doing our own in-house efforts as well, and also be partnering with other DMOs locally so that they can really experience that regional travel using us as that center point of their Nevada experience. So here's some more of our tactical highlights. We'll be developing pitch and pitch emails so that we can send these to these writers and journalists to entice them to come here. We're going to be pitching our brand pillars so that our message is consistent. We'll continue to create and distribute press releases, many of which you saw for the rail bikes was our most recent launch, and then including the prison tours coming up and things for Nevada Day. We have one in the works right now. And then we'll be continuing to promote that Discover Your Capital message as we continue to focus solely on Nevada for anything used with our TOT money. We'll be monitoring media opportunities that come up. You've seen we've done a ton of media coverage around the rail bikes and other things happening in Carson City that Dave has done a great job doing, a ton of interviews for us, and which has gained quite a bit of media coverage for us. And in order to bring people in for those familiarization tours, we do a lot of vetting for those experiences, and that includes using a FAM evaluation form and a process of evaluation. So we make sure that our message is aligned with the message of the person that we're bringing in, and it's a very cohesive experience, and we're all getting the same message out that works for the both of us, and there's no conflicting messaging going on. We're going to continue to collaborate with industry partners, doing those joint FAM opportunities. We'll also be responding to relevant, what they call HARO, help a reporter out inquiries. So people who find us before we find them, they reach out and we are able to provide any information for anything that they're writing about Carson City. We will collaborate PR, social media, and original content on visitcarsoncity.com so that content is fresh. And we have more content to put out and more messaging other than just our typical brand pillars. We'll continue to use Cision to monitor and track media, which allows us to know what our PR value is, and anytime that Carson City is mentioned in an article online. So that's a perk of using KPS3 because it's a very expensive software that we likely would not be able to afford in-house. So that's a great tracking tool for us to make sure that we know that our efforts are working. We'll also be working with our internal digital and creative teams to align our brand focus, understand referral traffic to the website, to making sure that our efforts are working and going to the right places. And then we'll also see how the content is performing so we can continue to push out what works. And then we'll be generating monthly reports to highlight those results and impact of the efforts that we're doing with those PR reports that you see from me monthly at our board meetings. So our targeted media will be broken into two different sections during COVID, which is really going to be focusing on that Nevada travel, print, broadcast, and online. And then hopefully a post-COVID, which happens sooner than we all hope and think. And we'll be focusing more regionally in that aspect and still more on those drive markets. But depending on what the research is telling us, we're really going to focus on those places that make the most sense instead of just doing a large national effort. We'll really be working on who we're seeing on the website, using that data to track the right people and target the right people. And our sub-markets for those are usually Los Angeles, Sacramento, and the San Francisco areas outside of Nevada. And of course, those target markets that target audiences we're focusing on are family friendly, boomer and general traveler, and the blogger and influencers that we go after. And we have a niche audience of outdoor enthusiasts, railroad enthusiasts, history buffs, business and leisure, road trippers, and the multi-generational traveler as well. Our content strategy, to summarize what this large paragraph is telling us, is that we're looking to connect with our visitors in a deeper and meaningful way on a personal level. A broad approach is not what's working on a digital front. And so we're really going to be targeting our media and our content towards historical, outdoor, arts and culture, and family friendly. And we'll be using those digital efforts to make that as specific as we can. And we'll be promoting that across all channels. So whether that's Google Ads, social media, across all platforms, or using our YouTube advertising that we're doing. And then hopefully with these grants, we'll also be able to branch out into some other outlets as well, including kind of over-the-top television, which is, the commercials that you see while you're streaming online. So hopefully we'll be able to do some unique things that we haven't been able to do before. And our co-ops with Travel Nevada that they're doing now are really also helping with that as well. We have a ton of video content creation happening thanks to Zach being on board. He's really hit the ground running. So our video is really going to be our primary piece of content that we'll be pushing out to our audiences and to our followers. So a lot more to come on that. And then KPS3 is also quite responsible for not only they don't do all of our blogs, but they do provide at least one blog a month for us in addition to what we're doing in-house. Which has been incredibly helpful and also gives a nice outside perspective from someone who's not in it every day. So in July, they began this talking about road trip tips and also a wellness weekend, 6 ways to enjoy Carson City for a wellness weekend. In August, it was an inside look at the rail bikes experience. September was all about the Brewery Arts Center, keeping arts and culture alive. This month is the ghost stories of Carson City, which we usually hit something on the ghost walk tours at this time. So we're trying to keep that alive in the spirit of Halloween with that. November will be how the Stewart Indian School Cultural Center came to be. And then we'll also maybe be touching on the prison tours as well, and how that will be evolving depending on what information we get. And then we're also going to be launching a new Navigate Like a Nevadan video, which is something that KPS3 also helps us out with. And this will be focusing on the Kit Carson Trail now that the markers are being installed. And so we'll be able to highlight, if all goes as planned, with a wonderful couple that has walked the Kit Carson Trail, I believe over 600 times. And Dave, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's been hundreds of times that they've walked the trail. So we really want to capture that enthusiasm and help explain, why walking this trail is an important part of your visit to Carson City. December, we'll be celebrating the seasons in Carson City. January will be on your mark, get set, go explore the Kit Carson Trail. So we continue that Kit KCT vibe going as these markers are completed. And in February, we'll be trekking for treasures, highlighting books, shoppings, and antiques, and then hopefully have another Navigate Like a Nevadan video completed. In March, our spring checklist in Carson City. April, secrets of the Nevada State Capitol. May, eating and drinking local in Carson City. And June, a summer weekend in Carson City. And our social media strategy really will be continue to position us as the destination to launch from, and that hub concept. We'll push our brand tone. We'll inform our audiences about safe events and activities and attractions happening in and around the region. That focus on safety is really a priority for us. And then our goal is to increase the audience followings across all platforms by a combined 20%. So thank you for the opportunity to show you what our strategy is for our communications plan and our PR. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to field them for you now.
Questions for Stacy?
Liddy, I assume the information that Aaron presented to you is something that you've been getting and sort of incorporating into the strategy so that we're hitting those things by demographic that she brought forward?
Yes, absolutely. We've been, they do that every Tuesday. And so anytime that we have the opportunity to do that, if it works for either myself or Dave is usually on those calls. If not, we get the deck after each one. And I highlight that and go through monthly. So it's really helped us make sure that we're staying on focus for targeting Nevadans right now. Just also, there was so much turmoil with Tahoe. So that also played a lot into our decisions on where we were targeting. So it was really keeping a pulse on what's happening locally, but also the information that we were getting from them. So sorry to make that a long answer, but yes, we definitely have been taking that into consideration in our efforts.
So based on what you've been getting all along, were there any surprises or have there been surprises in that relative to post-COVID travel?
You know, one of the things early on was, you saw how it kind of spiked and then lowered, but we were really focusing on how deals were going to play an impact in bringing people to Carson City, whether that was making our deals page, working with our hoteliers, and that's something that we're going to be continuing to focus on and monitor, because that is a big, play for people to come to a region. And I've been able to travel a few times, and I'm sure you've seen that. There's definitely people out and ready to travel and ready to drive. So I think the drive markets, how far people were willing to drive, that was always interesting and continued to change. But it's definitely been a volatile experience and no consistency in a lot of things. So I'm really happy that we have this as a resource that we're able to change very quickly.
All right, well, I happened to be working in Vegas this past week. I had to drive down and drive back, so I saw a billboard in Tonopah. So I wanted to let you all know that I saw it, and looks good. It caught my eye. I didn't know it was there, and it looked good. So just wanted to pass that along.
Yay!
Oh, good. That makes me happy. Yeah, we that was something we really wanted to do out of the box, knowing that the drive market was obviously a priority for anyone traveling. Those road trips were a huge part of bringing people to Carson City. So Tonopah is a really natural, kind of middle of the road for Nevada, and we wanted to make a statement in that area. And so that actually just got put up last week. So I'm happy to hear that.
I'd like to make a comment. This is Bobby Rader. I just wanted to thank you for acknowledging Governor Sisolak's proclamation for National Indigenous Day today and putting that on your social media. So thank you so much. We got a lot of visitors today as a result.
I'm really happy to hear that. Yeah, I think that's an important part of Nevada's history, and to have Stuart to be able to celebrate that and educate people, I think that's really important. So thank you.
Any other questions for Lydia? Thank you, Lydia.
Thank you.
Future agenda items. At this time, any board member can request any future agenda items. I think there are any. Upcoming meetings, there will not be a meeting in November. Our next meeting will be December 14th, 2020 at 4 a.m. or 4 p.m. And hopefully
I'm not going to be here at 4 a.m.
You won't make it? Hopefully, will we be back in the Sierra room by December? Hopefully.
Yeah, I think we're scheduled to be back in, probably not by that meeting.
Probably not.
The work has to be done by, it's CARES Act money that we're using, and it has to be used by the end of December, unless they change that. So right now, the plan is, I think the first meeting in January, we'll be back in there. And I think all of the meetings from this point forward, this is the first public meeting in this room. From this point through the end of the year, they're going to be in here.
All right.
And can I make a comment relative, are we on public comment yet? No, go ahead.
On to item 11, board comments and announcements or requests for information.
Yeah, there you go. I wanted to thank city staff and contractors. They've been working really hard to make this transition happen and to, hurry and get the CR room rebuilt. And it's a tremendous amount of work in a really short amount of time. So thank you all for your efforts. And it turned out well in here. I like it. So thank you.
Thank you. At this time, once again, the public is invited to comment on any matter that is not specifically included on the agenda or as an action item. Any public comment?
Chair Jones, this is Piran Takis, if I might be able to make a quick comment. Can you hear me?
I'm sorry.
Piran, we're having trouble hearing you. If you just talk a little louder.
Can you hear me okay? Now?
Yes.
Okay. I've already told Mike this and Dave this as well, but I've accepted a position with the Attorney General's office. So this will be my last meeting staffed with CTA. So I just wanted to thank all the board members. I've really enjoyed being your DDA for the past year. I've learned a lot and I've enjoyed all of the meetings. I love being up to date on what's going on in town. So I just wanted to thank you. You'll be in good hands. I don't know who your next DDA will be, but they'll be ready to help you out in December. So
I'm sorry, that's not acceptable.
That's what I tried to tell her.
Well, you've certainly been a wonderful resource for us and a great help this past year. And sounds like this is a great opportunity for you, but we'll miss you. And nobody will
Thank you.
replace you. We'll just have another person, but you won't be replaced.
We know where her building is in Carson City, though, Mike, so she's just a pebble on the window away.
All right, our last item on the agenda is to adjourn.
I move to adjourn. This is Bobby.
We're adjourned.